Nicolás Maduro is 15 feet from the only door that can save his life. Behind him, Delta Force operators moving through his residence. In front of him, a steel-reinforced panic room. 12-inch walls, $2 million to build. His wife Celia reaches the door first. Her hand finds the handle. Then she hears boots in the hallway. Coming fast. They don't make it. It's 2:01 a.m. in Caracas. The largest military complex in Venezuela is under assault. Air defenses destroyed in the first 60 seconds. Power knocked out across the capital. There's $50 million on Maduro's head. The largest bounty America has ever placed on a sitting leader. Larger than bin Laden. Larger than any cartel boss in history. In less than 3 hours, he'll be aboard a U.S. Navy ship heading north. In less than 24 hours, he'll be sitting in a Brooklyn jail cell, the same facility that held El Chapo. But here's what makes this story truly insane. 1 week before this raid, Donald Trump called Maduro directly. "You need to surrender." And Maduro almost said yes. His inner circle was flipping. His government had just been officially labeled a terrorist organization by the United States. The bounty on his head had tripled in just 18 months, from $15 million to $50 million. According to multiple sources, he came very close to taking the deal. But in the end, he refused. He bet that America wouldn't actually cross that line. He bet that the international backlash would be too severe. He bet that his Cuban bodyguards and his military would protect him the way they always had. He was wrong. So why would America grab a sitting foreign president? One word: cocaine. In March 2020, the DOJ indicted Maduro and a dozen officials. The charges: narco-terrorism, cocaine trafficking, weapons offenses. According to prosecutors, Maduro wasn't just ignoring drug trafficking. He was running it. For 20 years. They called it the Cartel de los Soles, the Cartel of the Suns. According to prosecutors, this was the Venezuelan state working with Colombian terrorists and Mexican cartels to flood America with cocaine. The State Department put $15 million on his head. But prosecutors had proof it reached the presidential bedroom. In 2015, DEA agents arrested 2 men smuggling 800 kilos of cocaine. They weren't cartel soldiers. They were the nephews of Maduro's wife, the First Lady's own family. Both convicted. 18 years each. Prosecutors argued the cocaine money was meant to keep the family in power. After that, Washington concluded Maduro would never leave voluntarily. So they decided to take down everyone around him. Over the next several years, the dominoes fell one by one. General Cleaver Alcala surrendered to Colombian authorities and was extradited to the United States. He pleaded guilty to supporting FARC terrorists. The judge gave him 21 years. But Alcala wasn't the real prize. Hugo Carvajal, nickname El Pollo, the chicken, former head of Venezuelan military intelligence. Carvajal had been one of Maduro's most trusted allies. He knew everything. After years on the run, Spain finally extradited him to New York in 2023. And in June 2025, Hugo Carvajal pleaded guilty to all 4 counts. Then he did something nobody expected. From his prison cell, Carvajal wrote a letter directly to President Donald Trump. In that letter, he called the Maduro government a narco-terrorist organization. He offered to cooperate fully, to testify against anyone. The walls around Maduro were collapsing. And then came the election that broke everything open. July 2024. Venezuela held a presidential vote. Opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez was running against Maduro. International observers said the election was neither free nor fair. The government controlled the voting machines, the media, everything. But opposition poll watchers managed to collect tally sheets from roughly 85% of the country's electronic voting machines. Their numbers told a very different story. Gonzalez, 67%. Maduro, 30%. A 2-to-1 landslide for the opposition. Maduro's response? He declared himself the winner anyway. No evidence, no detailed vote counts. Just a claim of victory. The US raised the bounty to $25 million. Then, in August 2025, they raised it again, $50 million. the largest reward ever placed on a sitting head of state in American history. And what Maduro didn't know was that a CIA team had been operating inside Venezuela since that summer. 5 months of surveillance, tracking his movements, mapping his compound, learning every escape route, including the one to the panic room. Approximately 1 week before the raid, President Trump made a direct phone call to Nicolás Maduro. The conversation was short. "You need to surrender." Maduro seriously considered it. Think about the position he was in. His former intelligence chief had just pleaded guilty and was cooperating with American prosecutors. His government had been officially designated as a foreign terrorist organization. There was $50 million on his head, and half the world had stopped recognizing him as Venezuela's legitimate president. He came very close to saying yes, but in the end, he refused. Maduro had survived for more than 20 years in Venezuelan politics. He'd survived coup attempts. He'd survived mass protests. He'd survived crippling American sanctions. He'd even survived a bizarre seaborne invasion attempt in 2020 when American mercenaries tried to capture him and failed spectacularly. He'd beaten everyone who came for him. Every single time. Why would this be any different? He was wrong. Friday night, January 3rd, 2026. 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time. President Trump gives the final authorization for a mission codenamed Operation Absolute Resolve. For months, U.S. Special Operations Forces had been training on a precise replica of Maduro's compound at Fort Tiuna. They knew every hallway, every door, every window. They knew the exact location of the panic room. They knew how many seconds it would take Maduro to reach it from his bedroom. More than 200 operators were about to surge into the heart of Caracas. 2 a.m. local time. Caracas explodes. U.S. forces strike Venezuelan air defenses first. According to analysts, they were completely exposed, undisguised, unmanned. Years of corruption made them easy targets, destroyed in the first minute. Power fails across the capital. Command and control collapses. Then the helicopters arrive. 2:01 a.m. U.S. helicopters touch down at Fort Tiuna. Delta Force operators hit the ground running. Inside the residence, Maduro and his wife Celia hear the explosions. They know immediately what's happening. They run. The panic room is at the end of the hall. If they can get inside and seal the door, they might survive long enough to negotiate, to wait for a counterattack, to find some way out. 15 feet away? 12 feet? 10 feet? Maduro's hand is reaching for the handle. Operators intercept them 3 feet from the door. Both are taken into custody. Outside the residence, Cuban Special Forces, elite troops who had served as Maduro's personal bodyguards, attempt to mount a defense. The firefight is intense but one-sided. 32 Cubans are killed. Venezuelan officials later report more than 100 total deaths across all the strikes that night. 7 American service members are injured. None are killed. Here's how fast it happened. 2 a.m. First strikes, air defenses destroyed. 2:01 a.m. Helicopters land at Fort Tiuna. 2:15 a.m. Maduro and Flores captured. 4:29 a.m. Maduro is aboard the USS Iwo Jima, heading north. Less than 3 hours from first explosion to extraction, by nightfall, Maduro is in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, the same facility that held El Chapo, a place that's been described as hell on earth. A man who ruled a country for over a decade, now locked in a cell. But the raid wasn't the real story. This story doesn't end with a prison cell. Venezuela sits on 303 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserves. That's the largest on Earth, roughly 1/5 of the entire world's supply. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia. Before Maduro took power, Venezuela was producing 3.5 million barrels per day. Under his rule, production collapsed to less than 1 million. Days after the capture, the U.S. Department of Energy announced it had begun marketing Venezuelan oil on global markets. The proceeds don't go to Caracas, they go to accounts controlled by Washington. Trump met with executives from Chevron, ExxonMobil, and others, pushing for $100 billion in new investment. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked how long the United States would control Venezuelan oil sales. His answer? Indefinitely. As for Maduro's personal fortune, the DOJ seized approximately $700 million in assets. Luxury homes in Florida, a mansion in the Dominican Republic, private jets, jewelry, cash. And that $50 million reward, nobody gets it. When asked, Trump said, "Nobody deserves it but us." Maduro appeared in Manhattan federal court 2 days after the raid. He told the judge, "I am the president of Venezuela. I consider myself a prisoner of war." He pleaded not guilty. His lawyers are arguing head of state immunity. But the United States stopped recognizing Maduro as Venezuela's president back in 2019. So did more than 50 other countries. If convicted, Maduro faces life in federal prison. Tonight, Nicolás Maduro sits in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, 23 hours a day in his cell. A 2-inch mattress on a metal slab, 1 wool blanket. And 6,000 miles away, American oil executives are meeting in Caracas. 303 billion barrels. After the capture, Maduro's son made a statement. "If we normalize the kidnapping of a head of state, no country is safe. Today, it's Venezuela. Tomorrow, it could be any nation that refuses to submit." The question is, who's next? If this hit different, subscribe. Justice or a line that can't be uncrossed?